In the last video, I showed you how to assign roles and permissions at the project level. So what we did is we assigned our data engineer, Carl, full access to all of the data in BigQuery that we've got underneath this project. Now what I'm going to do is show you how to assign access to only a subset of your data. To grant the permissions that I'm about to share with you, you have to be either the owner of the project or you have to have the role BigQuery project owner. The nice thing about the role BigQuery project owner is that it allows you to delegate that to someone on your team. So if you want to have one person who's responsible for BigQuery access, but not responsible for everything else you've got going on in Google Cloud, you could delegate this role to that person. There are two ways that you can limit access to a subset of the data that you have in BigQuery. In this video, I'll walk through how you can grant permissions at the resource level, meaning permissions to access a specific data set or a table within a data set. In the next video, I'll walk through how you can use dataset tags to manage access. I'm going to show you a quick demonstration of each approach and talk through some of the pros and cons to help you decide which you might choose in your situation. Okay, so back to our example scenario. We're talking about Tobias now. Tobias is an analyst, and all he's trying to do is create dashboards in your BI tool. So maybe you use Tableau, Looker, Power BI, whatever it is. I don't want to grant access to sensitive user information or financial data. So I'm just going to share the Google Analytics dataset with Tobias. So going back to the screen share, I've created a new window here. Here I'm logged in as Tobias at kin-williams.com. Now the first thing I'm going to do is navigate over to BigQuery, and I'm going to grab the URL of the dataset that I'd like to grant Tobias access to. And I'm going to just copy and paste this over to verify that Tobias at this point does not have any access to this data. So you can see I've got an access denied error popping up here. So what I need to do is come back to this data set. Again, in the yellow window, I'm logged in as the project owner. So this is me at kin-williams.com. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the three dots next to the Google Analytics data set. Here there is a share option, and this pops open a permissions window that's very similar to what you saw on the IAM screen at the project level. I have the ability to add a principal here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add Tobias at kin-williams. I'm going to give him the same roles that I gave Carl Weathers, which is BigQuery Data Editor and BigQuery User. And then I'm going to hit save. But before I hit save, you'll notice one thing right away. There's no conditions field in this window. So I do not have the ability to have Tobias's access to this data expire in the same way that we did with Carl's. I will show you how to solve that problem in a moment. For now, I'm going to hit save. And this is where a lot of people stop, but this is not the end of the process, and I'll show you why. If you go back over to Tobias's window, refresh the page, you will notice I now have access to the data set. I can see the details, and I can click down and I can see the tables inside this data set. However, the problem comes when you attempt to run a query. So I'm just going to write a simple query. I'm going to select the event name and run that, and I get an error here. The error says you seem to be missing permissions on the billing project. The billing project can be changed using the project picker at the top of the page. So I close this and I see, oh, right, there's no project selected. Back over here when I was using me at kin-williams, it said BigQuery IAM example. So let's take a look. There is no BigQuery IAM example option here. In fact, all I have access to is the kin-williams organization, but not to any projects within that organization. So what happened is I granted Tobias access to this data set, but when Tobias attempts to run a query, he needs to be billed for that processing at the project level. And currently, Tobias doesn't have access to any project. So to solve this problem, we actually have to create a separate project where we give Tobias access to run queries from. Now, this is only a problem if you're granting access to a user who doesn't use Google Cloud for anything else. Most of the people that I work with, if you grant them access at the dataset level, they can choose another project that they're already a part of to have the billing go to for those queries. However, in this use case, you've got someone who just is creating BI dashboards. This user may not ever get into BigQuery. They might not have access to any projects. So here's how we're going to solve this problem. In my main window here, where I'm logged in as the project owner, I'm just simply going to create a new project under ken-williams.com. I'm going to give it the name BigQuery BI Billing. And I'm going to use my same billing account, keep it under my same organization and everything. Hit create. Now, once this project is created, it will take a couple of seconds. I'm going to navigate to this project. And in here, you can see I've already changed the drop down, BigQuery BI Billing. In this project, there is no data being stored. So in BigQuery, you can see it's created a project grouping, but there are no data sets inside of it. What's great about this is now I can navigate to the project level permissions, just like we did for Carl Weathers, and I can add Tobias to this project with very broad permissions without having to worry about granting access to data that I don't want him to see, because the data lives in a separate project. So I'm going to go ahead and make him a BigQuery data editor. I'm going to make him a BigQuery user. All of this is at the full project level. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my conditions. So let's have it expire in Q2 of 2024. And you get the picture. I won't do it for the other role. I'm going to save that. So one thing about Google Cloud is there is caching on the permissions that a user has, which means that if I grant Tobias some new access, it takes a little while before Tobias can see that. However, one trick to get around that is for me to send Tobias a link, and when he tries that link, he'll be able to access the new content. And when this page loads, now Tobias has the option to select BigQuery BI Billing as his project. The other thing that is helpful to do when you're using two projects is to make sure that Tobias stars the data sets he wants to use. This can be helpful because you'll notice on the left side window, my BigQuery IAM example project, where all of my data is stored, is not visible to Tobias, even though he has access to the Google Analytics data there. It is possible for him to find it, but really the easiest thing to do is to grab this link, send it to Tobias, and that will open it up in the left window, and then he can simply star the data set or the project. And then in the future, he can always click Show Me My Starred Projects and data sets, and they will pop open for him. Now, I have access to run queries against one project. And I can run those queries against data that is stored in a second project. So let's make sure this works. And to do that, all we have to do is rerun the query that we tried a few minutes ago. So I'm going to click on the table, and I'm going to click Query in a new tab. And I'm going to select the event name from my Google Analytics data. And there you go. So Tobias now has access to all of the data that we want him to see, and only that data. Just to repeat one last time, there's no financial data here and there's no user data here in Tobias's view, despite the fact that that data does exist inside the same data set he's accessing. We've given him edit permissions, which means that he can build tables, he can run queries, he can do all kinds of things, he can build views. However, he can only do that on the data that you want Tobias to see. Now, there's one very slight variation on what I just showed you that might be helpful to know about, which is that you can do the exact same thing for a specific table that we just did for a data set. So what you do is you choose the table that you would like to grant the user access to. I'm just going to change it up. I'm going to say we're going to go user data this time. All right, let's go financial data. Let's pretend we've got a financial analyst. This analyst needs access to our revenue data that we've tracked in a BigQuery table. However, there might be other data in that data set we don't want the analyst to see. You just click on the table and you have the same ability to share. It's not in the 3 dots next to the table though. It is actually in the Explorer window here at the top next to query. When you click share, you are now only sharing that table's data, but it is done the exact same way as the data set sharing that I just showed you a moment ago. So I can add a principal here. I cannot add conditions to that principal. That principal will not have a project to bill against. We'll have to create another project and add them to that project. One thing that you should know though, if you want to grant users access only to a specific table, this is your only option to do that. If you want to grant access to a data set and let the user see all the tables in the data set, you have another option, which is to use dataset tags. So I'm going to jump into that next.